Not that they didn't do some egregious and horrible things, they did. But to remember that they were working class. And you could see it. Every time the white shirts came in, their demeanor changed, and most of the worst atrocities were carried out by the white shirts. Well, I was giving a talk in New York, and I had said to the people in Zuccotti, look, you know, we only have to deal with these white-shirted assholes a few hours a day. The blue uniform police have to deal with them all day long. So I was giving a talk in New York, and afterwards a guy comes up to me and he goes, I'm a white-shirted asshole, and I read all your books.
Okay.
And you know what? It was an important lesson to me that I shouldn't have said what I said, and that internally, you know, there is no population or group in this country that has a greater cognizance of how rotten this system is than the people who run it.
Yeah, and then we're going to move on to questions, so start thinking about it.
Actually, I think we might move straight on to questions.
Okay, all right. Anybody from outside of New York, raise your hand if you have a question. Okay, right there. You may.
I've heard it, I heard an argument, because I've been talking to people a lot. I have been all along trying to educate, but particularly this week since it's been in the news. And I've heard it said that it is better to have a military court, because in civilian court there'll be so much redacted material that there won't be a proper decision, that the jurors won't be able to make that decision. And
let's turn that over to Thomas Drake, or Jesslyn. Defer to the lawyer.
I
What's better,
think,
military or civilian court?
Civilian court. Right now, I have been one of the few people attending the Bradley Manning hearings, and let me tell you, I have no idea what the hell is going on. It's like so much of it is done in secret. There are no transcripts, except for, as the government points out, the ones that Alexa O'Brien does. The judge reads her rulings out loud. These opinions are available nowhere. Half the proceedings are taking place behind closed doors. You know, again, I know some attorneys think the military system is better, but if you look right now at the military commissions on Guantanamo Bay, which are in their 4th iteration, and again are failing miserably and cutting out audio and visual feeds by some Wizard of Oz, unknown third hand, otherwise known as the Original Classification Authority, otherwise known as the CIA, you can see how problematic they are. So whatever kind of kangaroo court they would create to deal with people being subject to indefinite preventive detention, we already have a model. Look at Guantanamo.
Okay, next question. You over there.
From New Jersey,
Okay.
on the fact that our senators haven't supported any attempts to remove this language from the NDAA. I'm wondering who, though, in our area, in the tri-state area, maybe even federally at the national level, we can look to and say, you know what, this guy or this woman is worth donating a few $100s to or whatever, that kind of thing.
All right, who is a legislative champion against the NDAA in the tri-state area?
Anyway.
Well, the only amendment we had that challenged Section 1021 was written by Dianne Feinstein, and that was a very inadequate amendment, because all it said is that Americans have a right to trial. It left open the possibility that they could be seized under the NDAA and put before a military tribunal. This did pass the Senate, but it was under John McCain's leadership. The House Senate Committee to unify the bill dropped. The entire amendment was dropped. I don't think that, I think part of the problem for those of us who care about our open society, or what's left of it, is that we have to recognize that the formal systems of power don't work, and they're not going to protect us.
Well, what about Rand Paul? He gave quite an impassioned speech.
Yeah, Rand Paul
NDAA.
called the guy who went and shot the bus driver a hero. You know, I mean, you know, I have a limited sort of tolerance for the libertarians. It seems to me a pre-industrial.
Striking a very different post from Carl and Bruce.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I mean, on civil liberty issues, yes, but it comes with a whole package which frankly I find racist towards African Americans, and has this bizarre idea that we should make the government more anemic, as if somehow that's going to help us against ExxonMobil. It makes absolutely no sense. So I want to qualify the libertarian stance. I think we have to go back and read Havel's essay, 1978 essay, Living in Truth. And I was with Havel every night in the Magic Lantern Theater in Prague. And he was a pretty mediocre president, but he was a great dissident. And we just have to start living in truth, which is what Occupy did. And in fact, that truth to a state that is as internally as decayed and corrupt as I believe this one is deeply threatening. And that means civil disobedience, and it means getting arrested. And I don't enjoy being arrested. It's more time than I care to donate to the U.S. government. Yet, it is absolutely vital. And you know, we've done all sorts of Occupy stuff since Zuccotti, and people get dispirited because the groups are not, we don't have the euphoria of that fully square night. We had 35,000 people after and I say, look, we're where we should be. And I've covered these movements. Just, we'll keep coming out. We'll keep the flame alive. And our overlords, our corporate overlords, who are so myopic and so stupid and so greedy will do the rest.
Okay, next question. Yeah, so maybe way back there at the back in the corner. Yeah, you. Okay.
This was directed to Michael Moore.
Okay, for Michael Moore.
Michael Moore, you wanted us to vote Democrat in this past presidential election. Seeing what Obama has done and is planning to do some more, including destroying the Occupy movement, why do you still feel that your decision is the correct one?
Okay, let me repeat that. Do you still support Obama and the Democrats, even in light of NDAA and everything else?
I came down here in a car, and so I made about a 20-minute contribution to melting the polar ice caps.
Good answer.
And my dad and my uncles and cousins and all my friends and everybody who builds those cars and or used to build them in Flint and Detroit, through their job, contributed to what will be the end of this planet. So that's the dilemma, isn't it? I'm not a Democrat. I don't belong to the Democratic Party. I've never joined the Democratic Party. I voted for Obama. But I think that you can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think if you feel it's necessary to vote for Obama to prevent another 4 years of what we went through, great. But what they've said on this panel is absolutely true. And in fact, it's that the Obama administration is not that it's better than the Bush administration. In many ways, it's worse. It's absolutely worse, and it's much harder to fight because they have the liberal sheen over them. They put this face on it that makes it very difficult. It's much easier when the face is Bush. And I think with Obama using use of drones, all these other things that he's doing, the whistleblower, this man should not be in prison or going to prison. He should be given a medal of freedom. I think that we have to speak out and work against the Obama administration and everything that they're doing to destroy our civil liberties, and that's that. But you know, I exist a bit in the real world, and so I sometimes use a car and I sometimes vote for Obama.
Daniel Ellsberg, please.
Who has a question for Daniel?
Yeah. Questions for Daniel.
And this will be the last question. I'm sorry, but we have to be out of my time. So, a lot of pressure.
Dan Ellsberg had mentioned towards the end of the last seminar that we need to...
It's not a seminar, it's just a panel.
That we need to find ways to take action. And my question was going to be, what can we as individuals concrete, hopefully effective action. And then I started thinking about, as I was listening to more of this, that perhaps we need to look at it from a different point of view than demonstrating and writing letters. I live in New Hampshire, and I've been an activist and journalist, and I've done a whole bunch of things, and gotten very frustrated with all that.
What's the question?
Sorry. What can we actually do? And I'm thinking that perhaps we need a tipping point for our side, like perhaps the others have had a tipping point on for them with 9/11. I don't mean something violent, but some kind of a new paradigm of activism that might result in.
Daniel, do you see a new paradigm or a tipping point, or what do you suggest
How
to
is it to
people?
be done, then?
What? Yeah. Any concrete suggestions?
It's the question I raised earlier, as
Uh-huh.
you recognize, and I didn't raise it rhetorically because it's a very hard one to answer. I think in many ways this has been going on for a long time, and with very little in the way of success to show, except that at some points things could have gotten worse. The worst was sometimes avoided. For instance, I think it would be worse, not in civil liberties particularly, but in some other respects if Romney were actually elected. So I'm glad that he didn't get elected. But on civil liberties, I'd have to say, in particular on the prosecution of whistleblowers, there's one point where I think that he's possibly gotten away with this easier than George W. Bush could have, because the natural critics of his, largely Democrats, have managed to be silent. One thing we could do is now we don't have to worry about electing Romney this year or next year. There should be no holding back on we should not be hearing, oh, for 2014, we've got to be very careful not get in the way here. What kind of criticism does he deserve? I think what we've heard here is, in the way of civil liberties and even in intervention, not significantly better than Bush, which is not what we needed. As I say, it could be worse. But one word that's almost never been used here is secrecy. It's interesting, take this message that just came out yesterday in the New York Times, that document. I haven't seen anyone ask, why did that have to be classified, who classified it, who refused to put it out for so long? Now, it may be actually the administration, for some other reason, has put it out themselves, but the fact remains that there's said to be a very long, classified, secret law that justifies this. I would say there should be a demand of a kind we haven't seen for a dozen years, and that is that when we hear of a document like that, that is almost certainly discreditable and illuminating, and that's why it's being kept secret, like the other OLC memos on torture that reveal specifically what torture is, or this 600-page document, judge saying that there was no evidence that Zero Dark 30, that torture contributed to Osama bin Laden. Why hasn't someone leaked that, or why hasn't it been put out? So what I'm saying is, I think we should be much less tolerant. Alexa mentioned Congress earlier. Much less tolerant of Congress being absolutely passive on their investigative function, their subpoenas, and getting this information out as to what is actually being done in our name. One reason I think for this crackdown on secrecy is that with the new surveillance, they can actually do it more effectively without going to the journalists. They can look at his emails and his texts and everything else, credit card, find out the source without going to the journalist. That helps them. Second,
Daniel, I have to interrupt you. We have 2 minutes left, or 1 minute left, so you have the last word. Close things out.
A Democrat has to do it probably because it's a Republican, but I would say the reason this secrecy is being cracked down is that this president intends to continue with a blatantly illegal program of worldwide assassination. And in order to make that illegal program of assassination and covert interventions the absolute demolition of sovereignty, except for the U.S. and the president being above the law, I think we have to recognize this president, for Democrats or not, is not on our team. He is to be opposed, and the Congress we have to put in a new Congress that will actually enforce the law, investigate, and subpoena.
All right.
Hold on, before what to do, now's the call for help for helping our case. If you guys, there's a lot more, I wish we could talk about this further, but please do donate even if it's $5 to our case. We're all paying for this out of pocket.
What's
That
the
is one
website?
thing that is significant for us. It's www.stopndaa.org. You can also...
StopNDAA.org.
Yes.
All right.
I'll talk to
You know, there's over 200 people in here tonight. I think most of you know 10 people. Half of them might be friends. If you're on email, you could send a quick email letter out tonight about what you just witnessed here, what you've heard. You go on Facebook, you go on Twitter, use social media. 200 in here. If you've got 10, that's 2,000 in the next hour will hear about this. And tell them to tell 10 people. And by 9 o'clock, it's 20,000. And tell them to tell 10 people. And by midnight, it's 200,000. That's really how quickly things can happen. But it requires everyone to participate. Are you guys going to have a video or audio up on your, when will that be up? When will that be up on the site?
Okay, I think we have to wrap up. A round of applause for Michael.
Thank you. That concludes our panel.
If you want to get this if you want to continue this discussion, there's a space down the street
Yippee Cafe.
called the Yippee Cafe, 9 Regent Street.
That's the pie stroller.
Go down to our space if you want to keep this discussion going.
That concludes our discussion
Go to
in our panel.
our space at 9 Regent Street, the Yippee Cafe. If you want to keep this discussion going. Stop the abominable snow job.
That pretty much stops that pretty much concludes everything today in regards to that. And there's Megastream. I'm concluding, so Megastream may stay up, doing his thing.
I'm ready to conclude on my screen. Folks, I gotta keep this clear. We gotta keep everything moving on the topic.
How's it going? So at this point, everybody is clearing out. For those of you who are following me, or for those of you who are watching me, follow me on Twitter at The Pella Report, ThePella Report. You can also add me on Facebook. I use Facebook primarily as my soapbox, and yeah. So if you're into that whole opinion stuff, then add me on Facebook, like the Pella Report page, or add me. My name is Michael Philip Pelagatti. You can add me there. And I'll be looking forward to seeing you again when you tune in onto the Pella Report. So thank you all for watching. This is your host, Michael Pelagatti, and folks, I'm signing out. So take care. Bye.